In our days, the Japanese men immigrated to Hawaii as laborers. That's how the women came to Hawaii as brides. In those days, we had no choice. Our parents made the decision for us.
The history of women in Hawaii includes the picture brides who came from Japan, Okinawa, and Korea in the early decades of the 20th century. Although the Japanese, Okinawan, and Korean immigration began in 1885, 1900, and 1903 respectively, and while we have recently had an influx of Asian immigrant women from 1965 to the present, the major picture bride period started in 1908 and continued until 1924.
These photographs form part of a slideshow that is based on life history interviews with 20 women, each one over 80 years of age. We joined Dr. Alice Yun Che and Barbara Kawakami, who co-authored the Picture Bride study and photo presentation. They will share both photographs and stories about the women called picture brides who have shaped Hawaii's history. Their collaboration began when Dr. Che asked students to conduct life history interviews with elderly immigrant relatives.
They thought their grandmothers were just nice, sweet Japanese women, who really didn't rock the boat. And they, really didn't have much in common between the generations. But after they heard the stories, many, stories were like adolescent rebellion, or, sometimes they had many hardships and sufferings. So this third and fourth generation young, Japanese or Korean or Chinese women felt very close to their grandmothers. And also, for the first time, they said, I found myself as Asian American woman or Japanese American woman, and I'm proud of being Asian American or Japanese American because I have this kind of a grandmother. So they have some kind of a sense of heritage through female line.
Mm-hmm. My mother was the type that, see, Japanese women, Chinese too, I think, most Orientals, they never tell about the past or, whatever. So many things I found out, I think, after my mother was gone. People finally told me. So to me, it was an exciting thing, and I wish she had shared with me because I could have helped her, I think, She had really kept all that sadness within her, and some of the things were really traumatic when I heard it. And I thought, gosh, I could have helped her, had I known, because being a widow too with 9 kids, I think was rough. And after taking Dr. Che's course, I myself learned to open up, and I think I'm pretty honest with my children. But my mother's generation was entirely different.
Was she a picture bride?
No, she came a little before them.
Before?
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
The women that are the part of the study, the picture brides.
Mm-hmm.
When you say picture bride, what do you mean?
Picture brides period started in 1907 after the Gentleman's Agreement, and ended in 1924 when there was an Asian Exclusion Act was enacted. But for Koreans, it started 1910 because the Korean immigration stopped between 1903 and 1910 because of the Korean government's refusal to send more immigrants until the conditions in the plantation was improved.
So really, any of the women that came during that era are considered picture brides?
So 1910 is the year when Japan annexed Korea. So Japanese, Okinawan, and Korean, all 3 nationals came to Hawaii as a picture bride carrying Japanese passports.
Did the when they say picture brides, did they all exchange photos, or are there different stories? How did they become brides?
Oh, there were, well, variations, you know, like you asked why they were called picture brides. And those who came within the period 1907 to 1924, they call it, Japanese call it, you know, picture bride period or Yobiose Jidai, because they were summoned, you know, by people who were already here. And so there are many variations.
From the poor and crowded farming villages of Japan, Okinawa, and Korea, the picture brides made long journeys, dreaming of Hawaii as a land of economic opportunity and personal freedom. Arranged marriages through an exchange of pictures was one way many young women tried to benefit their families and secure their own futures. In fact, some women were so eager to come to Hawaii that they arranged their own marriages. An Okinawan woman tells of her self-arranged marriage.
When I was 17 years old, I arranged a marriage by myself. I went to the prospective bridegroom's house and said, "Please send me to Hawaii." I did not want to stay in the small Okinawa. I wanted to go out to the big place to see the larger world.
A Japanese woman dreamed of coming to Hawaii.
I was glad to come when the story of marriage came up with my first cousin in Hawaii. I heard many exciting stories from people who came back, so I had a strong desire to come to Hawaii. I thought that money grew on trees.
Many Korean women left because of their rejection of traditional marriage or their commitment to Korean independence. After having decided to be picture brides, they took formal pictures in borrowed clothes. The Japanese and Okinawan women wore kasuri kimono. The Korean had the chima jogori. A go-between arranged the marriage agreement. Then the woman obtained a passport and a visa.
Alice, the whole idea of a go-between, how does that fit into the culture?
Because go-between is the one, you know, who get the blames as well as the credit, and both families can save their face in case, you know, something embarrassment like rejection or misunderstanding or, you know, anything that has negative things going on during the negotiation. Then go-between can take care of it or smooth things up.
The photograph then became an addition to this process?
Yeah, so photograph, when it was invented, it was a good, you know, media to exchange so that, you know, the families don't have to deal with meeting the person, but they can still have some kind of idea how that person looks like.
What's that story that's...
Oh, it was funny because when they had exchanged photos, the Nakodo, the go-between, had sent photos, you know, to both the prospective bride and groom. And she was a young 17-year-old at that time, and the entire family made such a big fuss over the photo, the prospective husband's photo. So she was too shy to look, so she ran into the bedroom and pretended that she was asleep. And that night, someone had sneaked in the photo, you know, put it beside her pillow. So she took a real good look at it, and she thought, my, what a handsome man. And said he wasn't bald-headed like he is now.
Getting ready to come to Hawaii was a sad experience for women and their families.
My father and mother look, only tears coming out. Only tears coming out. Cannot talk to my daddy. I'm scared. So no one know Hawaii, how far.
1913.
I came on July 16, 1913. Everybody came to say goodbye at my home, and grandfather came too.
But grandfather couldn't say one word because he said, "This is ikiwakare. We have to bid farewell while we're still living." And 1 week after I left for Hawaii, he died. My uncle and aunt from the main house came to see me off. I left at 2 a.m. that day, and before we left our home, my uncle said, "Take a good last look at your home because you won't be able to see it for a long time." And how true it was, because I was never able to see him again.
あれは何よ、わしの友達が2、3人ほどハワイ行ったの。
My girlfriends went to Hawaii 3 years ahead of me, and they used to send the pictures.
その人らが来るのも、その様子は話は聞かんわ。
I used to hear many stories from them, and that's the reason why I wanted to come to Hawaii.
ハワイ行きたいな、行きたいなといつも思うておったの。それで何よ、ハワイへ来たのよ。それお母さんに話したのよ。You know? お母さん何
My mother told me, "You sure you want to marry a man who's 11 years older?"
言ったらお母さんが何よ、No, you は何よ、年が11
And I
も違う
said, "Sure," because I was anxious to come to Hawaii. But my mother said, "Once you marry him and go to Hawaii, you can never divorce him, because all your sisters are married only to one husband, even to this day."
ハワイ行ってから年が多いけ言うて夫婦別れでもしたら許さんど後のシスターブラダーみんな
So once you marry that man, you have to stay married.
あれ言われてお母さんが言われたあれ今に忘れきれんのよお母さんが言われた言葉の
The passage across the Pacific was a mixture of sadness at leaving the homeland and questions concerning the future. Yet for most of the women, the passage was bearable, especially for those who made friends with other women and shared their mixed feelings on the same voyage. As the ship approached closer to the port of Honolulu, their hearts pounded with concern over what was awaiting them. One big worry was having to pass immigration inspections and the oral test.
There were things, two things that they were scared of, meeting the prospective groom for the first time. And then secondly, they had to go through oral test.
What did that mean?
Physical test and oral test. Mm-hmm. That means you have to be somehow intelligent or educated enough to tell you your name, where you're from, and any question they ask in your own native language.
Dr. Katsunuma would say, will you hold up your kimono hem, and even that, because he would speak in good Japanese, standard Japanese. And the picture brides who came from the country couldn't even understand what he was saying, so they couldn't pass the exam.
Brides and bridegrooms had difficulty trying to match the photographs in their hands with their respective partners. Sometimes, especially for the Japanese, the encounters were humorous.
One Issei woman who came the second time to Hawaii whispered into my husband's ears, "If you want to find your picture bride, you look for the largest feet underneath the curtain, and that's your wife." Sure enough, when he lifted the curtain, he found me right away. He exclaimed, "Ah, what big feet this wahine has."
Because matchmakers feared that no woman would come if they told the whole truth about the man, both men and matchmakers usually either exaggerated or did not tell the whole truth. The men frequently had sent pictures of themselves taken 10 to 20 years before, or pictures of younger and better-looking friends. A 19-year-old Korean woman who came to marry a 45-year-old husband felt she had been deceived.
When you first saw him,
Yes,
what did you think?
my heart fell down. So disappointed.
Because in the picture he was handsome.
Yes, yes.
What was the picture like? He said he looked.
Picture is all right, 25 years old. 45 years old, really all looking, 20 years long. So we lived together, 3 months not talk together. Because I cook in early in the morning. I eat first, already. I go to my cousin house. I go watch where cousin house, help clean house. Dinner, early I cook and I eat first, already, cousin house. Bother my husband, no bother me. Then I cry, just throw the outside the door. I stand, same thing, cry. Then he, little while, come outside, he bring in. Then 3 months after, well, God help me, I'm all right.
My picture bride interview is said in the hotel the first night. She said many of the brides were screaming and they were physically, resisting their husbands, advance to have sexual intercourse. And this, women couldn't sleep because all night they were screaming, fighting, and kicking, and physical wrestling going on. Nobody told you about how man and woman get together after marriage. Nobody told. So you got scared.
Scared.
Did you know how to make rice or cooking? Did you know how to do cooking?
자꾸 콜 해봐지 생쌀이 되면 내 비리고 she make it like that, I make it like that, same thing. So throw again, 또 쌀 갖다가 또 하고. Sometimes okay, sometimes rice, no cook.
No cook rice, then what did you eat? Husband
Husband scold me, hit the 밥 때려주지 않았어. 그것도 맞았어.
Husband beat her up because she didn't know how to cook.
Because of the initial disappointment in their husbands and later physical, sexual, and mental abuse, some women threatened to leave or run away. A few such women were injured or killed by their husbands. If a Japanese wife ran off with another man, her husband often demanded $400 from the man who took his wife away in exchange for her passage money. A few women sought refuge at the Susanna Wesley Home for Women and Children, which was opened in 1899. Others gradually adjusted to married life and often became close to their husbands.
재미가 있는지 뭐 어쩐지 몰라. 그저 사니까 그저 살았지. 아무것도 몰라 그럴 땐.
She didn't know anything about sex or marriage life.
경기도.
그러니까 풍속이도 많이 달라요.
그래도 사랑했어요 남편은 사랑했어요.
And she didn't have any love feeling toward her husband in the beginning, but she said gradually.
근데 내가 뭐 모르지.
To love it.
그러니까 처음에 어려우셨어요? 남녀 관계하는 그런 것도 아무것도 모르죠.
아이고 모르고 말고 그 아무것도 몰라 그럼.
Not only were their initial arrival and early married life often disappointing, but the harsh realities of camp life in Hawaii were also frequently a shock. Soon after their arrival, women started housework, field work, and other wage-earning jobs, trying to balance the demands of family and work. With these hands, they did everything because it was either work or not survive. Much of their supplementary self-employed work was related to women's traditional work in the home, cooking, washing, and ironing for the bachelor laborers. Women's work was never done. Besides all this, they had their children to take care of.
After my husband went bankrupt in the pineapple venture, he didn't come home for 3 days. And I had 2 children and I worried so much. I waited and waited. He never came home. Actually, he had gone out to borrow money. He went from friend to friend in desperation to borrow money because we didn't have any money to buy food. All I had left was 1 roll of so mein, and in order to stretch it, I used half of it to make soup for the children and that's all they had, somen soup. I didn't even have any kerosene to light the lamp. So I walked down the road to this young couple to borrow kerosene in a small ketchup bottle, and that I used to kindle the fire for the firewood and to light the lamp at night. Now, when I think about it, I don't know how I endured all that, because it was so terrible not knowing where my husband was and not knowing where the next food was coming from.
One Japanese mother described her daily routine.
Mother's with baby had such hard time. We get up early every morning to make breakfast and bento, then work 10 hours in the field. After work, I come home, and no matter how tired, I cook supper, make furo, and feed the children. Sometimes I sew until late at night to make extra money.
Although some plantations had baby homes, the average workers often could not afford them or felt badly about leaving their babies with strangers. Sometimes young children were left under the care of older daughters or left by themselves. Others were taken to the fields by their mothers. Some were injured or died in accidents.
あの時はワヒハワにおったん。ハリマノにね。それも姉さんのヘレップに来たのよ。
Oh, at that time, I was helping my sister-in-law in Halimano, and I used to cook for 18 bachelors. I did the cooking, the laundry, and make the furo and other household chores. I did everything. I had one boy and one girl at that time. I had 2 children.
今死んだギョールとボーイがおったのよな。あれが20ヶ月や。ちょうど20ヶ月。つわんてもん。
The girl that died was 20 months old. My children went with the older girls in the camp to wash their hands, and below was a ditch. And all the older ones had washed their hands, and the younger one had gone later. And that's when she fell into the ditch and drowned. I had 8 children, and each time either my sister-in-law or close friend helped deliver the baby. After I had my one son, I went back to work. I used to carry him in one arm and snip the pineapple leaves with my right hand.
Ties between women were often stronger than ties between husband and wife, since they had more contact with one another than with their husbands, who preferred to socialize separately and often had little in common with their wives. In fact, many women emphasized that friendship at the workplace was the most rewarding aspect of their work. The social network there helped women cope with poverty and economic insecurity, and to live humanly in the midst of inhuman conditions.
One woman I know said she visited her friend every day, and I'm sure they were neighbors to each other, and exchanged or shared everything that she had or she made. If she made 1 gallon kimchi half, anything that she made or she got from somebody, she shared half to her friend. And another thing they helped out each other was when somebody needed money to buy something or pay debts or any kind of crisis, they had something called K or Tanamoshi.
How would the Tanamoshi or the K groups work? What was the method?
It's like about 10 to 12 people get together, and they have a monthly meeting, and they go around by everybody bring same amount of money, like $10 or $5. And they go around by taking turns to get that money. And the first person who gets the money, the earliest, have to pay the highest interest. and the person who gets the money last pay the least interest.
So it was a way of amassing some capital for a major purchase.
It's almost like savings and loans.
この家を買うときはね、頼もしいってあれやったのよ。
I bought this house with money I put into Tanamoshi. Every month I put $50, $50, and I never took the money. Those who took the money had to pay lease, but I kept it until the very end, until I got the $1,000. That's how I bought this house.
The first thing when I called them over the phone to contact them, they said, oh, why do you want to interview me for? I never did anything outstanding. I'm not 8i, you know. And so I said, no, I just want to hear your, you know, story, what you did since you arrived here. And yet they keep on saying, you know, but gosh, it usually ends up by the stories are so, you know, extraordinary, what they have done, but they don't realize it.
I believe in women's history built up from the bottom up and inside out. That means that we have to record those people, you know, including women, who are, you know, are most invisible and least recorded, and they don't have means or they don't have, you know, enough self-confidence or esteem to write or talk or record their own life by themselves. So we have to approach them, and I even tell students say, you know, my grandmother did nothing, or, you know, nothing to talk about. Even before she tries to convince grandmother that she is important, student herself think grandmother is not important. We believe in all women's lives and take all women's lives seriously. And inside out means that they have to tell their own story from, you know, themselves, not somebody else telling them. And also it includes their feelings and attitudes and values, not just what they did.
You see, in the beginning, they would talk about hardships. I would cry along with them, laugh with them, you know, all the funny things that happened and the sad things that, you know, occurred. But in the end, so when I asked them, do you regret ever coming to Hawaii? They said, no, no. If I was in Japan, I would be worse off. 27 grandchildren. Himago wa?
Himago ga 16.
16 great grandchildren. そしておばさんどう思います？ハワイ来てよかったと思う。こんなにたくさん孫もいるし、どう思います？
Oh, yeah. Oh, now, really, really happy me. Yeah. Children all good, and grandchildren all good, great-grandchildren all good. I'm so happy now. Yeah.
Got scared of husband, you got scared of other outsiders?
Too young as well. Now I'm not scared nobody.
We are here today because our immigrant foremothers, ordinary women, had the strength and determination to survive. We can appreciate their spiritual values by uncovering their hidden history, for their history is in essence our history.